Welcome to the second edition of Q&A. This time it's an Instagram special. I throw up a little photo on Instagram and ask people to comment below it, asking me a question. And you asked a lot of questions. You asked more than 50 questions, and I don't think I'm going to get a chance to answer all of them. But I'm going to answer some. And I think there was an interesting little theme to some of those questions, which I'm going to start with now. So an interesting question from Coffee by Joe. How would you open a specialty third wave shop in a city that hasn't been introduced to it yet? A city with coffee culture, but not specialty. This is a really good question and an interesting question. This is a great place to open, first and foremost. You can look at things two ways. You can say there's no demand, or you can see there's no competition. And I would definitely see the latter there. So how would I introduce it to people? Well, I would make sure I start by speaking their language. If you just come in and start talking about specialty in a way that makes you seem very abstract and strange and confusing and difficult, then it's going to be hard for people who aren't used to what you do to get interested and get involved in it. So I think the key to this is kind of two things separately. Firstly, I would want to look at what is driving people to buy coffee in that particular city. What are the successful cafes in that city doing well? If it's not quality, what else are they doing well? So try and understand a little bit of demand in the area. And then secondly, approachability. That might be in how you talk about coffee, that might be in the drinks that you serve, that might be considering price a little bit more carefully, though I don't think that's the thing you should worry about the most. Could someone come in, buy a drink and leave and not really have known they were in a specialty shop? They've just gone to a cafe that they liked, they got a delicious cup of coffee, they enjoyed going there and they want to go back. The challenge is every customer when you open is probably already buying coffee somewhere else. What are you going to offer that's going to change their life? It's going to change their route to work, it's going to change how much they spend, it's going to change maybe their morning routine. You're asking someone to make a big change in switching to your business. What's your value proposition? And if it's just this coffee is more traceable, or if it's just this coffee is a little bit sweeter, that may not be enough. So you can't just focus on the one thing. You can't just focus on cup quality. There has to be an overall experience that's very compelling, and have the cup quality and have the coffee that you serve be a piece of that puzzle. Zach Atkinson asks, UK cafe that specializes in pour-over. Is it too soon for this to be desirable enough to make a profit? This is a challenging question. What is it about pour-over that you think makes it particularly valuable? Is it that it's brewed to order? Is it that it's brewed in small batches? Is it that it's somehow theatrical? What is it that makes this a compelling offering? If it's just a cup of coffee, then why is it better than batch brew? And frankly, often it's not. What is it about pour-over that makes you want to do this thing? Pour-over is incredibly difficult to make profitable. Very quickly, your labor costs involved in having one person stand and brew coffee and frankly do very little else means that your cup price can very easily become disconnected from the experience the customer ultimately gets. Those 8 ounces, let's say, of delicious coffee become unnecessarily expensive by adding an enormous amount of labor to it. If you could achieve that same cup quality with much lower labor costs and therefore provide a more accessible price and a more accessible drink to the consumer, why is that not a better idea? I don't think a pour-over bar in the UK will ever be financially viable, because I don't think the premium that we add by the labor that we add really returns on with an improvement in the cup quality. Ed Bourgeois asks the question, in many cafes there are a couple of choices of brewed, yet there may be 5 to 10 plus bags of coffee, of different coffees on the shelf. How can more choices be offered in the future, or is it even important? Increasing choice is now given in all other beverages served. This is a great question from Ed, and it's absolutely right. You walk into a cafe, they'll generally have way more coffees on retail than they will be offering you to drink. So how do you necessarily connect what you're drinking with what you want to buy, or how do you understand what it is that you're buying? First and foremost, I think cafes need to be a little bit more thoughtful about what they're offering. There are a spectrum of experiences that should be reflected on their brewed coffee menu as well as in their retail wall. And I think connecting those two things could be and should be done a lot better. I think what it also comes down to is that we probably need to be doing a better job in how we merchandise bags of retail coffee. We need to do a better job of communicating what it is the customer's buying and how it meets their particular needs. And I would argue we don't know enough about what's driving consumers to pick the bags that they pick and the kind of experiences that they're looking for. I think there's huge opportunities for learning to do retail better. That Greek fella asks, a customer walks into your coffee shop, specialty one, and asks you what sets you apart from the other regular places where he drinks coffee. What do you answer? How do you communicate what you do to someone who's not familiar and not really interested in specialty coffee or whatsoever? Again, this comes back to something I touched on earlier, which is, how we get people engaged with our coffee shop businesses. And frankly, if it's not going to be about the coffee on the menu, then we have to look at everything else there. I don't believe a great cafe can get away with just being about great coffee. It has to be about great design, it has to be about great aesthetic, it has to be about great experience, it has to be thoughtful from start to finish. And if someone walks in and gets all the way up to the register, all the way up to ordering, and they haven't worked out something is different or something is compelling or something is unique about your business, then you still have a lot of work to do. And actually talking to them about coffee or anything else, you've already lost the game. Before this point, they need to understand that this isn't a Starbucks, this isn't a typical run-of-the-mill space. How are we communicating? Now, for a long time, I've used the example of restaurants. When you walk into a restaurant, you've got a pretty good idea of whether or not you can ask for ketchup with your food and that be acceptable. Nice white linen tablecloths, great flatware, beautiful stemware. That's going to be a different kind of experience to somewhere where you're going to bus your own tray. Cafes all look in many ways very, very, very similar. The way that you walk in, the way that you order, the way that you are greeted, the way that you wait for a drink before you leave, the way that in some cases you are expected to clean up after yourself. All of this stuff sends a message. If you want to send a different message, you've got to understand those touch points better. Finally, I guess that there has to be a conversation. You can't find something that resonates with a consumer without asking them a little bit about what's important to them. To just tell them what's important to you is a one-sided monologue, it's not a dialogue. You would need to talk to a coffee drinker to understand what drives them to choose the coffee they choose, why they go to the places they go, to give some context to your answer. So that's the other thing, you need to have a conversation. A few quick ones. GoPullCat asks if I have any plans to release a homebrewing beginner's guide. No, not at this time. It looks like Barista Hustle are doing some interesting stuff with education that I would recommend checking out. I'll put a link in the description down below. Luke B. Davis asks, when you're not drinking coffee, what do you enjoy drinking? 1, cocktails. I probably enjoy the cocktails me and my friends make more than I enjoy drinking them at bars. I think cocktails in cocktail bars often suck. I love wine, particularly natural wines, though I hate funky, badly made natural wines. I like well-made wines with low interventions. And thirdly, in terms of beer, I've gotten to be like a boring old man, and I really love interesting beers, but I have really almost no interest in anything above 5-6% alcohol. Like I just like lower alcohol beers. I enjoy drinking them more. And so those are the kind of 3 things I'm interested in the world of alcohol and booze. Tea, there's a company in the UK called Postcard Teas Tim sources amazing tea, and every time I go, I just have the best tea experience. If you come to London, please go and drink tea there. I'm scared to learn too much about tea though. I can't cope with going down another rabbit hole. And Tony Pramana, I hope that answers your question too. Camrathan Drick asks the question, when will we see a domestic filter brewer with more adjustable features like precise temp control, more flow rate, brew time? There is one now. I'm kind of testing it at home. It is from Breville or Sage. It's their precision brewer. You have 1 degree C increments of control, tons of variation on brew time, on bloom time. I will probably do a review of that in the future. I am really enjoying that particular brewer. Archie Balls asks whatever happened to the podcasts. The Gym 7 podcast in a slightly different format will be coming back. So if you are subscribed to the Gym 7 podcast from way, way, way back in the day, you get an update, I hope, in the next month. If you're not subscribed, there's a link in the description down below. He also asks if there's any new books in the works. In terms of the Atlas, everyone hopes to get a 2nd edition. I have obviously slowly been working on that. There's no release date for that or anything like that, but that's obviously something I would like to get to. That would be a big success and a kind of milestone for me. Aside from that, no other books, I hope, in the short term. Writing is always harder than I think it is. I would also just like to devote more time to writing for my blog again, as well as devote more time to this. A few different people have asked about recommended reading lists. I did write a big long blog post on this. I'll stick a link to it down below. It's the kind of beginner's guide and a bunch of great resources and books and all that kind of stuff. A tricky question. Don Caballero asks, what do you think about sending samples of free coffee to coffee shops that are already working with other roasters and they have not asked for them? As some European specialty roasters are becoming bigger, it is not unusual to see their products being sent to any new coffee shop that has an Instagram account. Is it okay we are all playing in the same market, or is it a C market tactic that goes against micro local roasters? More than one person asked a question like this. Inevitably, we're a growing industry, and so you're inevitably going to have competition. As more and more roasters enter the market, more and more people are fighting for market share. And this is really the heart of it. I've always believed that the goal here is to grow the market, not slice it ever thinner. As new entrants come in, inevitably they are going to win a piece of the existing market. And so if we don't grow the whole thing, then really we're all going to struggle and we're all going to suffer. So I've believed that for a roaster, the goal is really to kind of bring new cafes into specialty rather than just to fight tit for tat between other roasters for the good accounts out there. Because what I'm interested in really is longevity and relationships. You will be able to invest more into a cafe with more support, more education, potentially helping them out with more equipment, more coffee, if you feel there's going to be a return there. Blanket sending out samples is pretty short-term thinking to me. You might win an account on price, you'll probably lose it on price again in the future. You might win an account by being the hot new thing, and you'll lose it again when someone else is the hot new thing. I believe it's really about creating relationships and growing the market. We have to get more cafes serving great coffee rather than just squabble over the small amount in any city that are doing a great job. That's how long-term sustainability happens. And to finish, the ever lovely Colin Harmon asks the question, have you ever flown your drone around the Nuova Simonelli factory? Yes, Colin. Yes, I have. You were there. A little while ago, you and I went to Italy. We went to spend some time at the factory on some product testing. And the new building was almost done, and I thought I'd fly my drone. And I think what you really want me to do is show this bit of footage. So here you go, Colin. You win. Don't put this on the internet.
No, I wouldn't ever put it on the internet.
I hate you. Alright, that's today's Q&A. Thank you for asking questions. If I didn't get to your question, it may be because I want to dedicate an entire video to that topic in the future. There were some amazing questions in there that I didn't get a chance to get to. Do follow me on Instagram for the chance if you want to ask another question in the future. I'll probably do another Q&A focused on there in the future. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.